Do you guys all consent to me recording? Since this is an
Consent's
HR
given.
class, right? We got to make sure we get consent. Okay. So for our prompt, we are supposed to discuss a time when we were not a good team member. And then we have to also make sure we hit the point on the individual processes and the teams and teamwork section of our text. And we have to talk about individually why we think we were bad team members and giving an example. So does anyone have like a great example they want to start with?
I don't have a great one.
Sure, I'll go. It's not necessarily a great one, but it's one that I resonate with for having a bad uh, experience not being a good team member. So I used to work for Best Buy when I used to go to school out in New York, just to like supplement my income in some form way. And I knew like up until this point, I thought I was a good team member until I realized how throughout the time I worked there, and I was just trying to understand how my scheduling impacted the team. And because like with me being a student, I was like, well, these are the times that I can show up to work, and these are the times that I need like complete days off. Um, Most of the times, I would agree and come in on days that I didn't ask. I mean, that I asked not to come in due to school, and it just built that precedent with everyone around me, my managers, even the store owner, and the people I worked with. It was like, oh, like he's very dependent. We can ask him to come in at any time you want. The time that they asked me to come in that I knew was the final straw was they needed to come in during finals week. I was like, hey, I'm doing finals. I can't come in. I have another test in 2 hours. Like I physically can't be at work right now. And then at that moment in time, that's when it was shared that, okay, if you're not coming in, you can't work for us anymore. I'm like, okay, cool. I won't come in anymore. But I feel bad because in terms of being a bad team member, is not the way that I thought originally thought about like what bad team members are. But with me not coming in, I realized I left my team vulnerable for the seasonal work because like with it being fall semester, it's around December, so like all the Christmas shoppers, all the holiday shoppers, with already being short staffed, I left my team in shambles. Like it was another team member down, and they had to pick up the slack the slack that I left, and it wasn't my employees' fault or the people that I worked with. It was just poor management, and I never thought management could lead a person to be a poor team member, but here I am.
There you are. Thanks for going first. That was nice of you. Okay, who wants to go next?
I had one, but I kind of got to rethink it now because I was thinking more like class oriented, but now I'm thinking like you can do work. So I got to think of a new one real quick.
It's okay. I'm sure it could be either. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Let's see. So what comes to mind when I think about like how I wasn't necessarily the best team member, sorry, was actually when I was in my high school job, just coming out of high school. So it's been 3 years now that I've been at that job since. And within that job, workplace setting, being in high school still, I was kind of getting overwhelmed with like the school workload, and then being a senior at that time, and then also the workload of the job at the time. And so because of all of that stress, within my personal life or in my individual process, it kind of led me to have poor communication. Kind of like how you were mentioning, communicating with them when I could come in, when would be not to be the best time. But also because of the stress and taking on too much with from school and just in the work alone. I was spreading myself too thin, so I was finding myself procrastinating, not managing my time well. Um, and because of that, it was pushing back a lot of the projects that we were doing. So I was working at Boys and Girls Club of Lihue. And so during that time, it was pushing back a lot of the projects that I was scheduled to do for the kids at the program. And yeah, so after kind of realizing that during high school it wasn't the best time to hold that position, I kind of stepped out of the position and tried to improve from there. So I still wanted to be a part of the tasks and whatnot. So instead of being an employee, I just decided to be a volunteer worker. But yeah, the time where I wasn't the best team player would be at that job position I held back in high school during my senior year. Just being stressed and within my individual processes and not managing my time, not decision making or prioritizing, it kind of affected everything that I did within the team itself.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Cool.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Colby, do you want to go or you want me to go?
I can go if you want.
So recently I was not a good team member because my job right now is to project manage human resources system projects for MGM Resorts. And so I rely on a lot of other leaders in departments to communicate the decisions so that I know the impact to the company. Where I excel in my job is I'm responsible for organizing things and making deadlines and making sure that all of the steps are kind of outlined on who's supposed to do what. So recently, we had a new director in our compensation department join, and we're working on a project together that was supposed to go live in August. And because of his inability, I sound like I'm blaming, but because of his inability to make decisions, it's pushed us, and we're still in the process of trying to get this project off the ground and running. So in my meetings, I thought I tried a whole bunch of different ways to communicate to this person to try and get them to come on board and complete the tasks that they were supposed to complete. But I really wasn't focused on just how many things he has to do as the director of compensation for all of MGM Resorts International. So I think, I was a bad team member because I was only focused on trying to get what I needed out of him instead of trying to understand and recognize, one, that he was new coming on board in the first 90 days of his job and having to do a whole bunch of projects, not just with me. Two, that my project probably isn't the highest priority because there's other things like bonus programs that happen at the end of the year or union wage increases that happen as union contracts expire and renew. So for me personally, I recognized after I got feedback from someone that I was pushing him really too hard to try and meet my deadlines and to try and get me what I needed instead of saying, even though we were supposed to go live with this in Q3, would you prefer to push this back because there's other things that are a little bit more important? So I think what I've learned from that experience is even though I have a job to do and there's things that I think are important in my job to get done, that when you're working on a team, it's important to know what the bigger goal is, right, for the company, and making sure that even if it's at the expense of my job not getting done as well, that I contribute to the company being successful as a whole. So I'm still working on that project. I don't think it's going to get done this year. Probably be Q1 of next year. We'll see. But that's when I was a bad team member and I kind of learned my lesson. Like I need to be a little bit more understanding of other people's priorities and not just steamroll and get what I need out of it. So yeah, that's my example. Kobe?
Well, for mine, it would probably be, I can't remember the exact date, not within this year. I used to work at a sports bar up in Summerlin, Las Vegas, and there was a specific game going on. I want to say it was like the Knights or something like that in the playoffs, but we were really busy this night, and my shift is I'm a bar back, and so my shift was 3 to 11, and it was one of those nights where it's just busy your whole entire shift, and then you get off and you're just beat. You just want to go straight to bed. And this night we had a lot of people staying really late, and 11 o'clock rolled around, and I was exhausted. I just wanted to go home. And I think someone called out from our night shift or something like that, but it was basically just one bartender behind the bar. And they were asking me to stay later. And I think I stayed for a little bit, but I ended up leaving early. And I found out later that week that that poor bartender just got overrun the whole night. And so I felt bad. I felt like, man, it was like, even though my shift was over, probably should have stayed and helped him out. You know, like you said, just understanding other people's positions. I didn't know at the time that he was going to be by himself. I should have gone out of my way to make sure that he was okay, and that like, he would have been, that there was other people coming. And because if I had, asked him and checked in with him first, then I would have learned that he would have been all by himself, and I could have stayed a little bit longer and helped him out. But instead, I was just kind of thinking about myself and how tired I was, and wanted to get out of there and go home.
So I have a weird question. Do you actually think that you'll ever stay late again anyways? Like, is it really going to change your behavior?
He was quite upset, and he was quite busy that whole night. And so, I think if that time rolls around again, I think I would, just to be nice. It definitely sucks being behind a bar all by yourself when it's really busy.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I don't know. I guess I just think, like, if I'm being honest, yeah, I learned my lesson with this one individual director, but am I really still going to change? No. Like, they hired me to get things done. I'm going to get what I need to get done and get what I need out of people. So is it being a bad teammate? Partially. I'm not a director, but I think if I were a director, I would at least communicate to someone like me, hey, your stuff is not as important. And I'll get to you when I get to you. And if that means you push your project back, then you push your project back. So I don't know. Like, even though I feel like I was a bad team member because I could have been more thoughtful to this individual, to some degree, I also am like, shame on you for not communicating. Or to that bartender, like, shame on that bartender for not coming to you and being like, look, I really need you to stay. Right? I don't know. I feel like you could always, if I'm going to own my piece of it, it's that I didn't go out of my way to put extra thought about this person in their new position in the organization. But if I'm being honest with myself too, like, I'd rather make sure I get my job, just like with this project. Okay, let's talk about this. If we want to help our friend who's not here with us, there's a fifth member of our party that's supposed to be here talking about this with us right now, right?
Oh, there is.
So if we want to help him get partial credit, maybe his bad example of being a bad team member is not answering any of our messages that we were sending or not joining this. So as much as I would like to believe, like, I don't know, you could spin it, Colby, for your example, that you were tired and you have priorities, and it's your responsibility as an employee to take care of yourself so that you don't burn out. And I think, like, from a communication perspective, for Mark and Bri, you guys have very similar examples. You probably told them when you got hired that you had school. And they were probably like, oh, that's great. We can work around your schedule, like everyone does when they hire people. And then when it came time to, like, actually follow through on what they said they were going to do, they were like, nope, need you to be here.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And like,
I know it
things
sounds
are
bad.
like,
Like, we're supposed to be talking about how we are at fault, but I'm also to some degree like, shame on these companies for promising.
no, but if
things
anything,
nothing.
I think this is good dialogue on how team members don't originally become bad team members in their own right or in their own self. You know what I mean? Because, like, they don't want to be, like, I feel like no one inherently wants to be a bad team member. No one inherently wants to be a bad person.
No.
Exactly.
It's all it's yes, it's leadership. Yes, it could be fellow colleagues, teammates. No matter the scenario or the workplace area is.
Yeah.
I feel like I could just be blindly optimistic and have a big heart for everyone, but I don't think everyone wants to be a bad person. No one wants to be a bad teammate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just
it was funny. I came into this and I was going to use us as an example because I felt terrible how I I had the chat muted, And
That's not
I think I
you.
went
That's
like a
me
whole
steamrolling. That's me making sure that I get what I need to get done. Like that's just 100% how
like
I
it went
am.
like
Like,
a whole
okay, if you're not
day
going to
not
answer, I'm
talking.
just letting you know.
I know, I feel so bad too because I'm not used to Discord. Discord
Yeah.
is something totally new to me. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I not getting these notifications sooner? But yeah, so sorry about taking a long time to respond to.
But look, we all still managed to get here. So like again, I think like if something is important enough, you'll find a way to get it done, or you'll find a way to communicate that it's not the most important thing right now. So I guess the other spin on this that we could just talk about for 2 seconds and then go, because I know Bri, you have to go back to work, is our teacher normally likes to ask, but she didn't ask on this discussion. Okay, so if you're going to be a manager in the future, how are you going to take what you've learned from this and like apply it? So for me, what I can tell you is when I manage people, I'm going to tell them, if you're not getting what you need, ask the person, are your priorities different right now? And do I need to change the timeline? Like, don't wait for the person to tell you that your stuff is not nearly as important. Just ask them if they want you to change a timeline. Like, that's what I've learned from this. As a manager, I will empower my employees to, if they have to expand their deadline and not meet their goals because someone else is holding them up, that's okay as long as you give that person the option to opt out of whatever the timeline is.
Yeah, I think it's just
Absolutely.
like all about communication. If you have like, that's really the foundation of it all. If you have bad communication, there's so like all of our different problems can happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a good saying can round out this whole conversation is that closed mouths don't get fed. As nice and as much as we want to do good by people, closed mouths don't get fed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I know you guys just met me and doing this, but I live by sayings, like cheesy sayings, but they're cheesy for a reason, you know, like it
That's a
works.
good one. You remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so as a I guess thinking as a future manager, yeah, I would definitely um just make sure that the employees' health and well-being is on top of priority of everything. Like for my example, I mean, sorry, I was a little bit like I wasn't too good at explaining it in the beginning, but I was like losing sleep time. I was, staying up super late, stressing over a lot of responsibilities in both school and then work, and it was just too much to handle. And I felt because of that, it was just affecting like my creativity in the workspace, my effective communication. I wasn't the best at finding ways to effectively communicate, but like you said, closed mouths don't get fed, so it wasn't like a two-way thing. And so I think as a manager, I would just make sure that, yeah, communication and everything, and just making sure your employees are on top of 110% each and every day is what I would try to do. And doing simple things like checking in on them. Hey, how are you doing with this? Or how is your personal life? If it's overwhelming, let us know and we can work around that. But I think, yeah, everyone has a different background, a different story, and just making sure that they're okay is very important. Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we had a really good discussion. Do you guys feel good ending it here?
Yeah. So
I'm
how
good.
does this work? Is only one of us submitting this, or are you, Carla?
So here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to actually click stop recording right now so that it stops recording.